So, welcome to today's webinar, Marketing for Musicians. It's great to have all of you today here with us. Welcome, everyone. I am Julia, the Pixabay Music Community Manager, and I'm thrilled to have you all with us. So, a little bit about me. I've been a professional musician for the past 10 years. I've been touring and recording drums for different projects here in Spain, and I've also worked in festivals and record labels. And today, I'll be your host for this session alongside Mike, who is a music marketing executive and has worked with many different artists. Before we dive into the event, I'd like to take a moment to let Mike introduce himself. So please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Julia. Morning, everybody. My name is Mike Epstein. I am the SVP of marketing over at Good Talk. Good Talk is an entertainment company based in Brooklyn, New York City. And we have operations within music, content, merchandising, touring, and publishing. I've been doing music marketing and music strategy for probably about a decade now. I love everything music related. I love everything music marketing. I also write about music marketing on my LinkedIn and my Twitter and my newsletter. I'm excited to be here. I see we have some folks from all different countries and cities. I know for folks on the East Coast, it's somewhat early, and for anyone on the West Coast, it's very early. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you so much. And great. So, welcome again, everyone. Here's the agenda for today's session. We will be learning all about marketing in music, how to discover your artist identity. We will talk about branding for artists, creative strategies for promoting your music, and much more. And we will also be hosting a Q&A at the end, so make sure to ask us any questions that might arise. And let's get started. So, Mike, what is marketing?
Right. That's the golden question, right? That's why all of us are here. So, um, I think marketing can be defined in many different terms in many different ways, but for me, marketing is essentially the process of um, telling an artist's story to an audience and identifying what that audience is to get them to become invested in that artist and their product. That product could be, music, it could be an album, it could be a song. That product could be content, it could be videos, it could be photos. It could also be physical products. It could be merchandise like t-shirts or maybe pants or shoes. And it could also be shows like concerts and tickets and seeing somebody live. So I think marketing um, is a very broad and a very general term, but there's different elements and different stages of marketing. So the first stage is sort of what's the goal? Like, what's the goal of what you're doing? What's the goal of this song or this campaign or this album rollout? Who are the people that you're trying to talk to? So who is the audience and who are the fans of that artist? And then how do you tell that story to get those people vested into that artist story? So in the next couple slides, we're going to be diving into detail about how you do that, and it covers a wide range of marketing tactics from digital marketing, creative marketing, paid marketing. We're gonna get into a bunch of stuff. So I'm excited. So this is kind of one of the first exercises that I recommend doing with any artist and their team. And it's essentially asking the question of what does your identity stand for as an artist? Something that I talk about a lot with my team is what is an artist POV, right? Like what is their point of view, which is essentially what do you stand for as an artist? What do you want to be known by and through? And I think there's different ways that can be done. And I think the first way is obviously music, right? I think music is what you're singing about, what you're writing about, the elements that are in your music are part of your story and part of what you want people to sort of know about you. But then the other elements are who's your target audience? What do those people look like? Who is your ideal fan? Based on the kind of music you make, who is the ideal archetype of person who might like that? Um, where does that person live? How much money do they spend? It's without taking away any of the art behind it. It's this exercise can be really valuable when looking at it from a lens of like a business marketing a new product. So, for example, if Apple was coming out with a new product, they wouldn't just rush it into market and hope that people buy it. They would do testing and they would run exercises, doing market research, figuring out who is their target audience, what need does that product fill, what value does that product give. So as part of this exercise for artists, there's a couple questions here that I think can kind of help you get closer to those answers and really understanding what it is that you stand for, and then in turn, who's like the right audience for you. So, um, what's the narrative that you want to share as an artist? Name three other artists that are in your genre, so people that are similar to you that make similar music. Describe your fan in 3 words. Who is your ideal fan archetype? What is your target audience based on your data? We all have access to endless amounts of data through all of our social media platforms. So we can look at the top cities and the top countries and the top age demos, male versus female, so on and so forth. And describe your interest in 3 words. So this is really just a basic branding exercise to get an understanding of who you are as an artist, to understand what you stand for before you're going into market and putting out music. So this is kind of step one of that process.
This is great. And here's our example.
So this is our example. This is an excerpt from another project called the Artist Marketing Playbook that I did with a colleague of mine back in February. We had put out this playbook and we had really did it to raise money for the California wildfires that happened at the end of January. But in that playbook, there was this slide, and this slide is essentially making a mock artist. So we essentially made a fake artist, and we did this branding exercise for that artist to give you kind of an example of what this looks like in real time. So the artist is called Lenny the Prophet. Lenny is a fake artist. He does not exist. It is completely on paper, but we basically went through this exercise to give you an example of what this would look like. So for example, um, how would you describe your current music in 3 words? Lenny is intentional, he is nostalgic, and he's global. His passions and his lens of the world, and to be one of the greatest to ever do it, is something that he wants to share through his music. 3 similar artists that make similar sounds to him are Foggy Ross, Smino, and for Ro, his fan base in 3 words would be Gen Z, introverted, and hopeless romantic. And then he also lists some of his top markets, so his top cities. And this is a really important example because um, this is based on the artists themselves, right? This is based on who they are. This is based on where they're from. This is based on who they are as a person. And it's important to like identify this stuff prior to campaigning or rolling anything out to really get an understanding of um, when somebody goes to your music or to your social media or they like discover you for the first time, what are they getting? Who's the artist that they're getting back? So this is kind of like the step 2 of this first exercise, and I know Julie is going to get to some other slides coming up, and those slides are going to also kind of showcase how to also do this branding exercise.
Yeah, perfect. So we encourage all of you to discover your artist identity and do this exercise. It's very simple, yet it will give you a lot of information. And now let's move on to branding.
Branding. Yeah. So this is another really good exercise. And for those of you who don't know or who have never branded when it comes to just music marketing before, your brand is essentially how you shape and present who you are as an artist to make it more recognizable and make it more memorable. So essentially, for all intents and purposes, your brand is what do people think about when they think of you? What do they think about? What do they see? What are the things that can trigger and make them think of you and your content? So your brand can be visual, so it can be artwork. Maybe your artwork has similar themes. Maybe it uses certain colors or certain fonts. Maybe it's all black and white. Part of your brand is it photos. Um, all of your photos could have a similar theme or a certain type of imagery. And your branding is also part of your content, right? So that creative through line that is encompassed in your artwork and your photos can also be encompassed in video content. For example, maybe your really into the outdoors and you're an artist who makes music and you really love nature and all of your content takes place in nature on a mountain or on some sort of hiking trail, all of your photos, all of your videos, all your visualizers that are on YouTube take place on a different hiking trail. That's an example of building a brand around a certain theme. There's a certain through line that follows. So then when somebody can see that or when somebody mentions you, there's a brand that sort of pops up in their mind. And branding can also encompass if there's two different buckets, it's what goes into making a brand, and that's bucket number one, which we just talked about, artwork and colors and fonts. And then in the other bucket is what does the brand like represent? Like what's the point of that brand? And that can be anything from themes, hobbies, interests, and your overall POV. So for example, if I'm an artist who really likes cooking, I can incorporate cooking into my music rollout and into my marketing to make that a part of my brand so that when people think of me, they think of me as the artist who also likes cooking. So these are just a couple of examples, and in the next couple slides, we're going to dive in. And this is just like another great exercise to really think about, and I would encourage you guys to also do research. I think part of the beauty of social media and of the internet is that everything is online. You can look at anything, and it's all free. So I would encourage you to look at your favorite artists, go to their Instagram, go to their Spotify profiles, try to take notice of if there's any creative through lines in their photos and their videos and their content. And that I think will help you get a better understanding of how people are branding themselves. So color palette. So this is like another example of branding. So this is more of a visual element to branding, which is essentially what do you want people to think of when they see you visually? So for example, do you want your brand to feel very bright and full of bright colors and very vibrant like these photos? Is it more dark and like mysterious and moody? Um, a pop artist might have more vibrant colors and photos and fonts than an R&B artist who makes music that's very moody and feels like it's nighttime related. So the colors that you choose for all of your visual brand elements, your photos, your videos, your artwork, that is going to kind of help paint the picture of who you are as an artist. Oh, sorry. And just one more thought that I would encourage you to do this exercise to write down what colors you like and what colors you want to be used as part of your brand and write down the actual number of that color. So if you look here, these are like the actual numbers of these colors. So if you were to go on Google and you were to search, wine red and that number, that exact shade of red would pop up. So every shade of every color has a different number that you can use to find that exact shade. I would encourage you to write down what shade you want to use and write down the actual number. That way, anytime that you're making something visual and you want to use that shade, you know the exact color. So, for example, if you're making artwork, um, or you're paying somebody to make artwork and you don't want them to guess what shade, you can give them the exact color palette number and they can mirror that every single time. The next step of this branding exercise is building out your own mood board. Another name for mood board is like your own style guide or your own brand Bible, for lack of a better term. And the purpose of making a mood board is to create a visual representation of your brand identity and have it in a tangible form so you can reference it so you can get an understanding of what you want your brand to look like. And then B, you can give that to other creatives and other people that you work with to help communicate what your vision is. So your mood board could be, and we're going to get into a couple of examples, but it could be photos that you feel like represent your brand really well. It could be videos, it could be artwork, it could be anything that you feel like captures what you're going for. And you can use that as a reference anytime that you're making something creative and you want to make sure that it's on brand. that basically becomes your brand Bible. That becomes your framework and your guidelines for how your brand looks visually. And anytime that you're working with somebody to create something, if it's artwork, if it's a photo shoot or a video shoot, you have an actual tangible thing that you can give them to help communicate what it is that you're looking for. So um, as an artist in music, art is very subjective, right? So it's one thing for me to go to somebody who's going to create video content for me and say, I want my content to look really moody and dark and ambient, right? It's another thing for me to give him or them a PDF of 5 pages with exact images and photos of exactly what I'm looking for. So everything is super clear. So the purpose of this is really to give yourself a framework of what it is that you're looking for, and then to be also to give to other people. And I think there's some really easy ways to make mood boards. I know I myself have used these ways. Pixabay is incredible for it. You can create album artwork, music videos. You can pull all different types of content from it. It's a great resource. Canva is something I use in my day-to-day work every single day. My teammates use it. All of our mood boards and PDF presentations live in Canva. It's a very easy way to build decks and to build marketing resources, and you can create templates, and you can do it very quickly and very simply. You don't need any background in building decks, but you can use both of these resources to establish what that framework looks like and kind of have that as your baseline.
Yeah, love it. All right, let's move on now to strategies for promoting your release.
So we just established, I think, what's kind of like part one, which is like the exercise, and the exercise is kind of um, building your brand, getting everything ready, prepping to, make sure that your point of view is being built and that people understand what that is. And then now this section is you're actually putting out music. How do you promote that music? So you have your brand in place, you have your through line, you have all the things that you stand for. How do you then promote that? So we're going to go through a couple of examples. Each individual one of these could be its own 2 hour presentation, but just for the sake of time, and not boring you guys and not rambling, I'm going to go through them very high level. So the first one is short form content. I'm sure we all know what short form content is. It's basically vertical content that lives on TikTok, Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts. Um, we're in the age of social media. We're in the age of content. Short form is a fantastic way to create content at scale. So something that I've seen a lot of artists do, and that I definitely encourage a lot of artists is creating a high volume of short form content for each song or focus song. So, for example, if I'm putting out a really big focus single, um, I might look to create 10 pieces of short form content using the section of the song that I think is the most interesting or the most dynamic or the most catchy, and those 10 pieces of content I will be able to use and repurpose across all of my platforms. And because the age of social media is so fast, I think the shelf life of content is not as long as it used to be. I think a couple a couple years ago, it was, you put out a really big music video, and that music video could be big enough to make a big splash. Now we're in the age of short form, and you have the opportunity to create more content, do it at a larger volume, and just have more shots on deck. So that's the strategy with short form. Long form content is full length YouTube, music videos, podcasts, anything that's over a couple minutes long, that is on YouTube. Engagement and audience building, we're going to get to that in a couple slides, but that's essentially like nurturing the audience that you're building. So let's just say content is at the top of the funnel. You use content to find new fans and reach new people. How do you nurture those people once they become a fan? So if I go and I click follow on your Instagram and you're an artist, how are you giving me value besides me just following you? So there's some tactics and some, strategies there. We've all heard of doing influencer marketing, working with influencers of different niches. There's paid media, which is running advertising across Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Um, I think within music, those are probably like the key verticals. fan-generated content, which is also known as UGC, which is user-generated content, and IRL activations like listening parties, release events, and pop-ups. So I know I just went through a lot. This is very high level, but these are the general strategies that you can use. And um, you can think about these as like pre-release, release, and post-release from the perspective of like when you're putting out music, um, it depending on your strategy, it can be important to try to figure out ways to constantly market the song that you spent so much time and effort making after it comes out and not just moving on to the next thing.
Now let's move on to the channel optimization and let's go more in depth.
Amazing. So channel optimization is really looking at some of the key platforms that artists use for their music and some recommendations for how to optimize it. So starting with Pixabay, you have the opportunity to optimize your profile picture, your banner, and your bio. As we mentioned earlier, you can create your own mood board, which is awesome. That becomes like an asset that you can then share with other people. Um, you can create playlists. You can receive, um, people can have the ability to also donate money. So it can be a great way to drive revenue, and there's free events and then also resources. So Pixabay is a great resource to, um, you know, have your whole sort of like creative blueprint or rubric in one spot, not just for yourself, but to be able to share that with other people. So that's Pixabay. On Spotify, Apple Music, and Tidal, you have like the basics, which is your profile picture, your banner. Um, on all of these different social media platforms, or sorry, all these different streaming platforms where all of your music actually lives, um, they all have different formatting. So the profile picture size on one is probably different than the other. But just generally speaking, you can update your profile picture, your banner, and your bio. And then on Spotify, there's a ton of other things you can do. You can make your own playlists. You can highlight those playlists and pin it to the very, very top of your profile. There's something called Spotify Canvas, which is really cool. It's basically um, when somebody listens to one of your songs on the app, you can create like a moving video that lives on their phone as like an extra like dynamic, interesting thing. Spotify clips are basically video clips that can live on your profile. A pre-release countdown is essentially a landing page that counts down to a project to build hype and to get fans into it. And almost all of these tools have their own backend where you can look at the analytics. You can look at how every song is doing, which songs are doing better than others, where is your audience coming from. I know early on in this presentation, we spoke about, um, part of building your artist profile was looking at data and looking at where your fans are coming from. This is a great example of that. On all of these platforms, Spotify for artists, Apple Music for artists, you can get access to your profiles and really get an in-depth look at what and where those fans are coming from. So what cities, what countries, male versus female or other, what their age range is. It's a great way to kind of get an understanding of what your audience is. Um, so I won't ramble too much on this, but this is kind of a general overview. So that was kind of like streaming strategy. This is CRM strategy, which is essentially, if we're looking at this like a funnel, the top of the funnel is you put out content to um, win new fans and to reach new audiences. Those people then become a fan. And then what happens to those people that are now a fan? How do you talk to those people? How do you engage with them? How do you create more than a surface level with those fans? So here's a couple of examples. All these platforms have different use cases, but there's this platform called Laylo, which is great for SMS texting. Like rather than building up an email list, you can build up your own text list. It basically gives you a phone number that you can you post on social, and people can essentially text that phone number. And when they text it, they opt into your text list. And just like an email list, you can sort by where they're from, what city, what region. You can message people that are in certain cities. And for artists, I think for artists of certain genres, their audiences are more likely to text than to email. So this is a great way to sort of build those, email lists. Same thing with MailChimp, same thing with Beehive. These are just tools that you can use to further speak to your audience. So, for example, with Lenny, it was making his own monthly newsletter called Letters from Lenny, where you update your fans. And the benefit to having your own CRM strategy is that you own this audience, right? You don't own your Instagram followers, you don't own your Twitter followers, you don't own your TikTok audience. When you're funneling people somewhere and they're signing up, you obviously have to give them value as an incentive, but you own that audience. So if I have my own newsletter, I own all those emails. I can talk to those people at any time. If Instagram, falls apart next week or TikTok gets banned, I can still talk to those people. So there is a level of importance here, but it's a little bit further down in that funnel.
What about community?
Community. So this is kind of a similar thing. This is, I think, another element to CRM strategy. Pixabay is obviously very focused on that. It's a great resources for trying to connect with like-minded people, people that are in the same space. And then there's, very popular platforms like Discord, and then there's other platforms like Grouped and also Patreon. But the idea is you're funneling people into a closed platform to engage with those people in a little bit of a deeper way than you would on social. Um, and some of it is like monetary. So, for example, on Patreon, I could say for $5 a month, you can pay me and you can get access to content that's not on social as like an incentive. Um, or you can keep it free, but use it as a way to engage and just nurture some of that audience. So, for example, there's artists that have their own discords and they will host giveaways and monthly contests, and they'll talk to their fans one on one, and they'll share updates, they'll share sneak peeks of music or videos that aren't out yet. It's a great tool to engage with people one on one in a little bit more of an intimate way than social, which I think is very surface level.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that this part of community also is about retention. So Mike explained how you, first of all, you have to get the attention from casual listeners and turn them into fans. That is your audience or your community. But once they become part of your audience, how are you retaining them? How are you keeping, sharing value with them? And I think these are great tools, as you explained. So yeah, perfect. Now I think this is very important as well.
Yeah, I think we touched on it very briefly earlier, but the beauty of the era that we're in, which is the, streaming era, is that music, um, it doesn't go away, it doesn't die. Music can keep streaming and it can live forever. And I'm sure some of us here on this call have heard of artists that had songs that come out many, many years ago, and out of nowhere, maybe it blew up on social media and it gave a second life to that song. And now those artists are kind of catching a second wind or maybe even having their first win. That's the beauty of the current era that we're living in, is that there's no timeline, there's no expiration date. No song has an expiration date. A song from 10 years ago can find its way now and reach new fans every single day. And there's ways and tactics that you can implement to continue to let people know about that music. And that's all that marketing is, right? Marketing is like in simple terms, it's how do you get people to care about the stuff that you're doing? And that's what this slide is. It's how do I get somebody to care about something that maybe is not new, it already came out, but I still want them to care because it's still important to me. So, for example, celebrating the anniversary dates, this could be a very easy social media strategy of, posting on the anniversary of, important songs or albums or videos. That's just an easy way to drive people back to those moments. Doing like limited edition vinyl or merch drops. So, for example, there's a rapper named J. Cole, and J. Cole last year did a really interesting campaign where his album 2014 Forest Hills Drive, which came out back in 2014, so it was about a decade ago, to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of that song, he did a concert in New York City that was at Madison Square Garden, which is a huge venue. And he released a limited edition vinyl, and he released a new version of the album with like 5 or 6 bonus songs. And that was like an incredible way of taking an album that's literally a decade old and making another moment out of it and just getting people talking. And I think that's a really overlooked strategy, because I think that like one of the strategies is like new music and, putting out a lot of music, getting fresh eyes and ears on it and putting out new content. But there's also an older strategy, which is music lives forever. It doesn't ever die. And you always have the opportunity to create moments out of that. And all you're looking for as an artist is to get people to care, whether the thing that they care about is a new song or an old song. As long as they care and that is the thing that helps grow you, from my perspective, they're all very similar. So um, these are just a couple of examples. I think it's a balance between post-release, pre-release, and marketing something when it comes out. But I just think it's important, and I would encourage you guys and I would empower you guys to think about like the music that you worked so hard to create. You don't just have to move on from it after it's out just because it's out. There's ways to still bring people back to it.
Yeah, so inspiring. All right, now let's head to goal setting.
Goal setting. So this is a great exercise that can be included in the earlier exercises. And that's essentially just before you do anything, before you put out any music or any content or get into any campaigns, just asking yourself, like, what are your goals? Like, what do you hope to accomplish out of this? And I think this is a really important exercise because so many people don't think about this. And it's like starting a business, right? Like, not to get back to that reference example, but like, if you quit your job to start a business, you wouldn't just be like running. I mean, maybe some people would, but you would want goals. You would want to say, I need to make this much money for me to justify this, or for me to pay my rent, I need to make this much money. There would be tangible goals. It's important to do the same thing here. Obviously, with music, you have a lot less control. You can't, if there was a magic button that someone could press, I'm sure that person would be very rich. So there's no button, but it's important to make goals and kind of know what you're going after. That way you have a benchmark to look at after the campaign. So for example, if you're putting out an album and at the start of that album, you write down these goals, and those goals could be very small. They could be, I want to sell 5 pieces of merch. I want to do a show and have 10 people come out. I want to put out 5 songs and have 500 plays on each song. It could be very small, but you're at least giving yourself a benchmark so that at the end of the campaign, you can turn around and have something to measure against that.
Love it. Yeah. And all right, so that's all. Now it's your turn to ask us anything. Feel free to prompt your questions on the chat.
I can just share one more thing too, as
Yeah.
people are
Yeah,
maybe
please,
getting
of course.
questions together. Um, I think I know that we covered like a lot here today, and we covered it fairly quickly, so it might be a lot of information to digest. But I think it's important to think about that if you are an artist or somebody working with them on their team and you want to take your career seriously, I think it's important to be mindful of the fact that people will only take it as seriously as you take it. Meaning, if you are an artist and let's say that you came to somebody with these exercises done and you said, hey, Mike, I love to work with you on something. Here's everything about me. Here's my brand, here's my mood board, here's my goals, here's my timeline, here's what my brand looks like. People are only going to take you as seriously as they think you're taking yourself. So, a great way to make people take you seriously is to do these exercises, write it down, put it in a format that maybe you can share with people, and do a test. Share it with your family. do like a test assignment, put this into go into Canva, not to plug Canva, but go into Canva and make your own mini mood board and your own, answer some of these questions and maybe share it with your family and friends as a good test run and ask them what they think. And do market research and have something ready to be able to share with people so that when the time does come, people can take you seriously.
Also, Eleonora says, how do I jump from social to live events? Do you want to take this one, Michael?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's something that a lot of artists struggle with. I think it can be a very challenging thing because an online audience doesn't always reflect like IRL. It doesn't always mean that people will show up in real life. But I think the first place would be trying to build an audience online and engaging with those people, making those people feel seen, answering their comments, DMing them, going back and forth with them while putting in the same effort to create connections in the real world, going out to other people's events, going out to other people's shows and networking with them, going out to like industry mixers or parties, um, trying to get an understanding of what are the different music events happening in your city or your scene, going out and networking with those people. That's going to be a really easy way to build your network in that scene and help make that transition seamless.
Yeah, totally. All right. Then Chong Ching Wong asks, should I have to do some exercises related to this webinar? Yeah, of course. We encourage you to do all of them. Um, you will be able to watch again this webinar because we will upload it on YouTube. So we encourage you to do all of them and see how things start to change and start to make more sense, right? All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I think, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you go, you go.
No, I think these are great exercises. Obviously, you don't have to do all of them, but hopefully some of them will give you a better idea of kind of what your vision is.
Mhm. All right. Miki says there are a lot of musicians who go viral on TikTok. How can artists effectively balance the push for short term virality with the long term goal of building a sustainable and engaged fan base? Yeah, I feel like that's such a struggle nowadays because the market is so saturated. Yeah, what a great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's something that a lot of people are trying to figure out. And to be honest, I think the answer or part of the answer lies in um, uh, so many of the artists that are pushing for short-term virality don't have a brand. They're literally just like an internet artist who had a song that went viral and there's nothing behind it. There's no POV. They don't stand for anything. They're just an artist that had a song go viral. And I think one of the best ways to try to combat that for long-term growth and duration is to build a brand, to take the time to really like develop your artistry and like develop yourself, meaning like spending time on making really great music, creating great content, making great artwork, taking the time to go out and network with other people, taking the time um, to do things outside of just putting out music, maybe making merchandise, selling products. Those are all things that going into building a brand. I think a lot of artists that go viral on TikTok or on social media, they don't have anything for people to talk about besides just that one song. And that's why when that song dies out, which every song dies out at some point, there's really nothing else there. So I think doing some of these exercises, I think, can be helpful with that.
Mhm. Yeah. Right. Susie says, are there any templates in Canva for the mood boards or other music related materials? Yeah, there are many, many. And you can also, for example, find templates for album covers, for decks, for presentations, everything that we have been sharing. You can find that on Canva and a lot of images, videos, all types of content that can help you create mood boards on your own terms. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of templates as well. Right? Ambient houses. Should I pay for advertising using the materials I have created from various platforms, including Canva, to drive fans to my music?
I think the short answer would be yes, but I think there's a way to do it in a very like tactical way. Like for example, if you were running like Instagram ads or Facebook ads, without knowing what kind of music you make or your genre, Um, I would suggest maybe spending very low and just testing different types of assets. So testing different types of images and videos and looking at what does better and then spending more money on those things as opposed to spending a bunch of money from jump. Another tactic that you can do is uh, using your social media and your organic reach to like decide what to put money into. So look at the videos that do the best on your Instagram or your TikTok or your YouTube Shorts and run advertising on those videos because they've already done well and they've already proved that people like them.
All right. Also, Jody says, any tips when making your mood board and palette, figuring out your visuals when you are posting multiple creative directions, and any tips for artists without visual art skills? Yeah, I
It's a great
mean,
question.
yeah. Um, I would say just 2 cents about this, but I think that, for example, using Pixabay and Canva, it's for free. Like you can use it for free. You can try it for yourself. And there's a lot of content on Pixabay. There are millions of great content. I'm talking videos, illustrations, photography, music, sound effects. So anything that you can imagine creatively, you can find there. And if visuals are not your strength, there is very easy. You simply can just from Pixabay, you can choose any image and go and edit it on Canva. And it's very easy, it's very handy, and I think it's a great way to start. And then also what Mike said, that it's great to go on social media and simply get inspired by other artists. That's why the first exercise that we did, just compare yourself to an artist from your level, an artist 5 levels more, up on you, and then a bigger one, and see what you can learn from them, what you can get inspired, and yeah, and turn that into something authentic for sure. But I think Pixabay and Cam is great way to start. And yeah, I don't know if you might want to add something to this.
Yeah, I think Pixabay and Cam I think is a great place to start. I think um, trying to also maybe think about like what is true to you as an artist but is also like palatable enough for people to like resonate with and maybe is not so abstract that it's gonna like deter people. So for example, if you're being torn in different, there's three different things that you really like, three different ways of going about your branding. That might be worth thinking about is like out of those three, what do I think is true to me, but also might have the best shot at resonating with people, and then building something out based on that.
And we will move now on to Fahad. He says, which release strategy is more effective for gaining fans, releasing songs from a music album one by one, or launching the entire album at once? All right.
To the question. Yeah, I think for an emerging artist, and it's different for every artist and every genre, but I think just putting out songs just one by one, just like individual songs, and you can use those songs as a tool to build your audience and get some motion going and get people excited. And then when you feel like there's like enough people that are waiting for more music, you can then drop a full project. I think what can be challenging about dropping a project from like the very jump is like um, that like attention spans are not what they used to be. So to ask somebody to sit there and listen to 8, 10, 12, 15 songs, it's a bigger ask nowadays than it used to be. And I think it's a bigger ask if you don't already have a small group of people at minimum waiting or like excited for that music. And then you just hit them with 10 songs. And that's a much bigger ask for those people that are maybe not vested yet. So I personally always like putting out singles and just building hype based on that.
All right. Nicole says, how do you suggest I can apply this advice as a songwriter, not an artist? Wow, love it.
That's a great question. Um, I think it's a bit different, right? Because I think it's not as forward facing. You're not building your profile as an artist. Um, I don't want to give you like the wrong advice. I think it's definitely different. I think as a songwriter, maybe it's how you like present yourself to people. to leave like a lasting impression. So, it's not just based on your songwriting and your music, but maybe like if there's something like interesting that you do on socials or you dress a certain way or there's something that you do, right? Like there's people that I know that um this is actually maybe like a decent example. There's someone that I know who's a songwriter that lives in like a very small town in a state that's not known for any music. It's like very out there. And in order to get his name out there, he started doing like these monthly meetups where people could come to his studio and they could network and they could have coffee and they could listen to each other's music. And it started to like bubble and like become a thing. And he started to like become known for that thing. Um, that may not necessarily help him get like a song placement or be able to write for somebody else, but it's at least getting his name out there in a way that maybe it wouldn't have previously. So I don't know if that's the best example, but that's something that I could think of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. And maybe I would also add that as a songwriter, you can try to go into songwriting camps and network with producers and mixers and people that are also working in studios so that they might know some artists that might be struggling, writing their own music and they might need a songwriter so that they can call you. Um, and definitely you can apply a lot of the branding and marketing advice, but of course it's different because you're not trying to maybe promote some release as a front artist, but you definitely want to connect with other artists to help them write the music that then they will release. So yeah, try to work with people in the industry that might be more behind the scenes, but they are very important and crucial for creating songs. And then there's also this app called Muso.ai, in which they share all the credits from any song that is out there so that you can go and type in a song that you like and then you can see the credits. So who was the songwriters, the producers, the mixing engineer, and all of that. And then you can start, maybe you can find them on Instagram or different social media apps, and you can network with them and talk with them and try to start from there. I don't know. I hope this helps as well. All right. Then Monique says, I've heard a lot of people talk about the amount of time you need to give yourself to release a single, roughly 6 weeks or so. Why is the period so long? Is it possible to release your single in a shorter time period? How could you release it sooner without disturbing your marketing strategies, the single, etc.?
It's a great question. It's a good question. I think companies and record labels suggest 6 weeks so that they have enough time to set up the song properly. So there's all these different moving pieces that come with like setting up a song, right? It could be pitching the editors that are at some of these streaming platforms to make them like aware of what's coming to hopefully get placement. So the more lead time you have, the better the likelihood that you will get something because you have more time to send them updates and send them info as opposed to rushing. So, for example, if you were signed to a label and they asked for 6 weeks, they would be using that lead time to, pitch some of those editors at different streaming platforms. It could also be a longer runway to tease the music and promote your pre-save and run a campaign for your pre-save. You just have more time. Um, is it possible? It's absolutely possible. There's no like definitive mandatory guidelines. It's all about what your goal is with that song and what your expectations are. So, for example, if you have a song and you're like, this is a big song. It's really important to me. I want all the looks and opportunities that are possible. It's probably best to give yourself more lead time. But if you're like, hey, I just want to put out music, I want to feed my fans, I want to continue to just drop, you could put out a song every 2 weeks. There's artists that put out a song every week. As somebody that works in hip hop, I for the right artist, I love that concept. I love that strategy of putting out a song a week. I think it keeps you super consistent and active and your algorithms, not to sound nerdy, but your algorithms on all these platforms stay very active and warm. It's not a strategy that's feasible for everybody, but I think it all depends on what your expectations are and what your goals are and where the song sits in order of like priority for you.
Awesome. All right, we'll take three more questions and then we will move on. Now, Colin, I'm looking for a resource where I can connect with other artists for collaborations. What would you recommend? All right, personally, of course, I will recommend Pixabay. It's a great platform, and I know a lot of as a community manager, I know a lot of different creators that are already looking and they want to collaborate with other artists from different media types and also in music. So I think there you can find a good tribe of people, like-minded people. And then, of course, social media. I think that it's important to not be shy, to don't be scared to approach someone, of course, always with respect, but say, hey, I'm doing this. I like what you're doing. Maybe we could collab and see where that leads to. Do you want to add something to this, Mike?
Yeah, I think um honestly, I think joining communities like Pixabay and some of these other online places where other artists um live. So for this may not be a good example, but like Reddit, like if you go on Reddit and you go into the like, music industry subreddit, there's a ton of artists that are asking questions, that are looking to network with each other. I think those are great places. Um, I think social media, is a great place to network. You can DM or message other artists. You can, go on Spotify and listen to an artist's music. And if you like that artist, you can just Google and find their Instagram. I think that's also a great tactic as well. And then obviously, I think Pixabay is great as well to network and meet similar-minded people. And then, like the other thing I think could be um, Eventbrite. Eventbrite, going on Eventbrite and looking at like events happening in your city, music events, art events, creative events, um, going to concert venues when there's shows and looking to network with other artists that are playing at those venues. I think those are all good tactics.
All right. Savan says, have you seen any new technology or trends that you think might change how we market in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI. I know that's a very general term, but I think AI for sure. I mean, I think we're already seeing it. There's AI. I think AI is going to lower the barrier to entry with how people make content and create marketing materials and resources. I think people are making their own music videos in AI. They're making their own short form for half the cost of what it used to cost. So I think the barrier to entry is going to go down from artists that just learn how to use AI and become very tech savvy. I think that is going to drastically change marketing and it's gonna lower the barrier to entry. So there's going to be more people. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if, as saturated as it is, it might become even more saturated as more people have access to more tools. Um, I also think, and I have a lot of friends that have been telling me this, that they think that like in real life is making a big comeback. That like over the past couple years, since COVID and the pandemic, everyone has been digital and online and in their homes. And I've been hearing from a lot of people that like grassroots in real life marketing, getting outside, interacting with people, I think that's going to make a comeback. I don't necessarily know that that's like innovative, but I do think that I'm seeing more people focus on that, making people feel something, giving them something tangible, listening parties, events, launch parties, pop-up activations, like fan engagement campaigns. So yeah, not necessarily like a new technology, but definitely I think it's going to help innovate things for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think also that live music will take a comeback, and people are, you know, I think since everyone now is online, a lot of people lack more human connection and having a real life community. I think that will for sure be something that we will see more and more. And then I would also say that I've seen a increase of startups and companies that promote a lot this idea of artist-centric platforms in which they want to put the artist on the center and create something that helps the artist actually market themselves, find their own audience and all of that. So I think that if you wanna, you can look online artist-centric platforms for musicians, and I'm sure that you will find a lot of new platforms that maybe can help you. And then, all right, I think we have all of it. Mm, okay, last one. Fahad said, uh, I got one more question. What's your advice for turning one viral moment into long-term success?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it earlier, which was just building a real brand that can withstand that quick viral moment. And um, this is gonna sound very general or very vague, but if you're fortunate enough to have uh, a viral song or a viral moment, I see so many artists that have that viral moment and then they stop putting out music because they think they have to focus on that one song. And then like eventually that moment will die and then they don't have anything else because they didn't put anything else out. So it might sound very vague, it might sound very basic, but to just like continue to put out music, like don't let one viral moment stop you or make you feel like you have to put everything on hold. You can, music, like the best marketing tool for a song is new music to drive people back to that song. So I would definitely like encourage to not just hyper focus on one song and stop putting out music. The other thing is um, to get people like feeling like they're vested in you, to get this new influx of fans and this new audience back to that conversation about like, nurturing those people. So let's say you go viral. Um, like how are you nurturing those people? Where are you funneling them? What value do they feel like they have by following you? Are you just another TikTok artist and they're going to jump to the next one, or maybe you create your own newsletter or your own SMS text phone number, and you start having people sign up for it and you're giving them discount codes for merch or clothing or teasing music. There's a ton of ways to do that. But yeah, those are a couple ways that I'm kind of thinking about.
Yeah, totally. And I would also like to add that it's very important to have clarity, and truly know what you want, because that gives you direction. And once you know what you want, then it's more chances that you will get there. If you don't really know what you want and suddenly one of your songs turns viral, then you can freeze. I've seen this in artists that they freeze and they don't know if they should be releasing something else, but maybe people won't like it as much. And I think it's very important to previously know what you want and how you envision your career, and see it as a marathon. It's not a sprint. If suddenly one of your songs becomes viral, congrats. I mean, it's great. Your team will also be very happy. But then I think it's important to keep going and keep releasing your own music, and yeah, and have a lot of clarity and be lucid when these things happen so that you don't lose sight of what you truly want. All right, we'll have to move on. See, thank you so much for your thank you so much for your comments. All right, last one. Do I need a website? Steve says, no, you don't really need a website right now. But I mean, it's good, but it's not necessary. Um, it's good in a sense that people, if you have a website, you own that, and you're not relying on third party platforms. And in your website, you can choose to add anything about you, about your artistic project, and you can promote all the links that you have, and you can make it easy for people to find you. But definitely, it's not something that you truly need. Mostly when you're starting. Yeah, if you're a major artist, yes, something else might.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Yeah.
All right. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. So now let's move on to the end. So what's next? Here's some reminders. We will upload this webinar on YouTube so you can watch it again or share it with others. Also, we have more upcoming free workshops and webinars. So if you don't want to miss out on any of those, don't forget to join Pixabay today. You can scan these codes from your mobile and you'll see Pixabay and also Mike's newsletter. So make sure to follow Mike and join his newsletter. More than 4,000 professionals and musicians are already signed up and getting valuable content created by Mike on marketing and the music industry. And also, I want to highlight that this webinar was inspired by Mike's course called Artist Marketing Playbook that he created with Drew De Leon. If you felt inspired by this webinar, I encourage you to check the playbook and learn more in depth about marketing for artists. So, yeah, do you want to add anything else, Mike?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, thank you guys for all joining here. I hope that there was a lot of value. I hope that you guys had your questions answered. Feel free to sign up for my newsletter or to reach out to me on social media. My Instagram handle is Hey Mike. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me. I will do my best to try to answer them if I see it. But yeah, the music marketing landscape is very vast. And it's endless in terms of how you can promote things. So yeah, I think doing some of these exercises will put you in a really good space. So yeah, thank you guys for joining. Thank you for your time, Julia. Thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah, that's all for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And a huge thank you to Mike for sharing all your expertise with us. We hope that you found this webinar helpful and that you took some valuable insights and tips. And yeah, take care and we wish you all the best in your music career. Bye bye. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.